Bonjour, bonjour. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Language Maven. Today is not just any day. Today, we are celebrating the International Translation Day. And to mark the day, I have a special guest for you. She's an amazing language practitioner, language expert. She is a published author. She's done so much for the language industry. I am thrilled to have her with us on the show. And before that, before I introduce our guest, our special guest, I would like to share this with you. Translating is a testament to the power of human communication and the endless possibilities for mutual understanding in our diverse world. Isn't it beautiful? We are blessed because we are able to communicate in different languages. And today, with our guest, we are going to explore even more the world of translating. So let me introduce to you our guest, Dr. Alice Leal. And before I take her to the stage with me, I would like to give you more information about who she is and what she does. Alice Leal is Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Translation and Interpreting Studies at Wits University in South Africa. She has a BA in English and Portuguese from UFPR from Brazil, a master's degree in literary translation from UFSC from Brazil, and a PhD in translation studies from the University of Vienna, Austria, where she taught for 14 years and also concluded her postdoctoral research on translation and language policy in the European Union in 2021. Her habilitation, which is Venia Docendi, was granted in 2022 by the University of Vienna in the field of translation studies and multilingualism. She has published extensively on the intersections between translation, philosophy, and literature. You will agree with me that she is a wonderful guest for this day as we celebrate the International Translation Day. And I'm so excited, so blessed to have her with us. And let me introduce you to Dr. Alice Leal. Bonjour. Hello, Dr. Alice.
Bonjour, Eva. Bonjour, merci bien. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is such a flattering introduction. Oh my goodness.
Well, I'm honored to have you on the show. I mean, this is wonderful. And thank you so much for your time and your availability.
For inviting me. It's an honor. And Sani Bonani are the ones that are watching us.
Oh, fantastic. We are celebrating the International Translation Day, and Dr. Alice has so much to say. And, she's such a humble person. I remember I used to call her Professor Alice, and she said, please, Eva, call me Alice. So Alice, thank you so much once again for being here. And it's going to be an exciting show. It's a conversation between you and I. And unfortunately, we couldn't be live, but let's try to give as much to whoever is watching, but not live, but, it will be later on. But let's try and give them as much as we can. So let's start with what is for you this day? What does it mean for you, the International Translation Day?
I think it means, for me personally, it means a very nice opportunity to give translators, interpreters, language practitioners in general, more visibility. I think we're all used to sort of working undercover, like special agents. No one sees our work really, or very rarely. And often when we are seeing, it's a negative thing, right? If someone notices the interpreter, if someone notices that the text is a translation. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to come out of this invisibility ethos, so to speak. And it's a very special day. And that's why it's lovely that we have the program today, because we can talk about this visibility. We are there, we are important. We really shape how information gets across into different languages. So this visibility is actually undeniable. It's just that we don't talk so much about it. So let's talk about it, right?
That's fantastic. I love what you said about visibility because indeed, being a translator myself, I sometimes feel that I am invisible. You know, we don't always know the person behind the document that was translated. We don't always know the person in the booth who is interpreting, you know, and we take for granted the work that language practitioners, that interpreters and translators do, and we don't understand how hectic it is, you know, because we are not machines, and yet we are really giving something extraordinary because we break barriers, we break language barriers, and we allow communication. So I love what you said about visibility. And yes, so we invite all our colleagues, interpreters, translators, as you watch that, please share your comments, even if it's not live, but we will get to see your comments and the conversation can carry on. So tell me, Alice, and thank you so much for allowing me to call you Alice.
Oh, come on, seriously.
I know, I'm just pulling your leg.
Okay, yeah.
So tell me, what do you think? What are now the issues that language experts are dealing with, especially translators? You know, now in 2023.
Well, if we speak specifically about the Southern African context, then I have to say I only got to South Africa last year, so I'm learning about the context. What I'm going to say is obviously all very initial impressions, but I have the impression that a big discussion point is at the moment is the question of qualifications. Obviously, South Africa has been extremely multilingual from the beginning, from before colonizers went there, through the entire process of colonization and afterwards, etc. And this multilingualism has always been there. I think it shapes South Africa as a nation. And I think now the question that is emerging is, well, yes, we do speak various languages. Yes, we do need lots of language practitioners to mediate amongst these languages. But do these practitioners need qualifications or not? And I think this is an extremely important question. It's also, again, to come back to the question you asked at the beginning, this question of visibility. Who are we as translators and interpreters and language practitioners more broadly? Do we need some kind of accreditation? Do we need an external organ to tell us, much like doctors and lawyers, okay, you may work in this field or not? Does it suffice to have some kind of university degree? Is it even necessary to have a university degree, etc.? So I think this is probably the topic that is uppermost, you know, in people's minds in this area in Southern Africa at the moment. It's a discussion that has taken place in different corners of the globe and is taking place. I can speak of my home country, Brazil, as well. I know this discussion is also happening there. And it's important to continue thinking about that together. I mean, what makes sense for South Africa, you know, for this particularly multilingual, multicultural context that is the Southern African context, also as a whole, not just South Africa. Yeah, so that's pretty exciting. I feel really privileged to be a part of these discussions.
No, fantastic. And you know, I love what you said because qualification is indeed a very important aspect because I received a lot of requests from people who are interested in becoming translators or interpreters, and most of them do not have qualifications. And they just ask me, but can't you mentor me so that, I can become a translator or an interpreter? I speak many languages, so I think I can be a translator or an interpreter. And very, very often I reply that, but no, but if you do not have any qualification in the field, you will struggle. And also, it will be unfair to professional language experts or language practitioners who went to university to get a degree and who are now, working as a professional language expert. So it's a good thing to know that you are interested in becoming a translator or an interpreter. But if you are really serious about it, you should enroll in a higher institution, a university that provides you with the necessary skills, the necessary theory, and everything you need to become an expert, you see. And most of the time they would say, yes, but I already did some studies. I already have a degree, maybe let's say in, I don't know, like let's say in
Languages.
accounting, or yeah, not even languages, but like,
Okay.
because I think if you have a degree in languages, it's already very good. Because, for example, I studied English, French, and then I specialized in translation when I was doing my honors degree, you see.
Mhm.
So, but before that, I was doing a BA specialized in English and French. So you need that. You need that foundation, and then translation can become, a specialization for you. But if you haven't even done languages and you've done something else, like economics or anything, can you think that you can just learn without going to university? So you can learn, uh, through a company, for example, by working with a company or by being mentoring by someone else. Do you think someone can do that?
Well, I think this is a very complex question. I think it is a myth to say I speak more than one language, hence I can translate, I can interpret. These are
Mm-hmm.
completely different things. I mean, to translate and
Yes.
interpret, you need a set of skills which is extremely complex. You need to learn that. Can you learn it just practicing? Probably. You probably can, but I think it would take much longer than if you
Mm-hmm.
learn as a part of a qualification that focus on learning, work with experts that know how to teach you how to learn those strategies. This is one
Mm-hmm.
aspect. But another aspect which I find even more important is the fact that, I mean, linguistics, translation studies, interpreting studies, these are academic disciplines, and they have this wealth of research that has been done in these different areas. I mean, translation and interpreting studies are just two of a series of other disciplines that are relevant to language practitioners. And I think it is, I mean, you'll always be, how shall I put this? You probably won't feel as competent, as complete, perhaps, as a professional if you don't know about this academic background, you don't know the history of your discipline, and also for critical thinking. This is always, I mean, what I always tell my students. I think you can work in the market for 30 years and learn lots of practical skills, but you rarely have the opportunity to stop and look critically at what you're doing. What is my role in society? Why am I here? What is the history of the people that came before me? What's happening in my discipline at the moment? What are we trying to achieve in terms of social justice, etc., etc.? So I think qualifications are extremely important for that as well, to make you a fully fledged professional in this sense. And this is something the market can't offer to you.
I agree. Thank you very much for that. And, we are in the era of AIs. I'm sure you've heard a lot about AIs. And I had a discussion with a colleague. She is a Portuguese translator. And she told me that lately, well, it's been a few months, she hasn't received a lot of requests, but she thinks that because of AIs and, the translations that AIs do, and because they get the work done faster, like you can now with AIs have a document of 100 pages translated in like a few seconds, a few minutes. But can AI replace human translators? Do you think that it is possible? Because now a lot of translators are scared that because of AIs, there will be less need for translators. And when they are contacted, usually the client will say, okay, you know what? The document was already translated. All I want you to do is proofread it and then send it back to me. So I want a better rate, so a cheaper rate. What do you
Cheaper.
think of that? Yes.
Yeah. Again, this is an immensely complex question, right? Well,
Yeah.
what springs to mind, I was just taking a few notes here. I think
Yes,
on
of
the
course.
one hand, there's again this question of visibility and this question of awareness. I think most people
Mhm.
out there, if you ask them, they will say, well, translating is something relatively automatic. It doesn't require, much effort. All you need to know is more than one language. These myths that anyone who has engaged with any kind of language practice will know is not true. So I think this awareness is lacking out there, and also this question of the visibility of language practitioners, the importance of their work, especially in a place like South Africa, right, where social
Mhm.
cohesion, we're going to talk about that, is such an important
Yes.
topic
Mhm.
across language, different languages. So this is one aspect, but I think there's also a lot of there are a lot of misconceptions around artificial intelligence. For example, there's this notion that it's perfect or near perfect, which is not true. I mean, if you take any text that has a little bit of more, metaphorical language uses, anything that is a bit more idiosyncratic, it doesn't work. Also, it depends
Mhm.
on the language pair. We're mostly talking about English here. But if you
Mhm.
take a different language pair, if you want to go, say, from isiZulu to Portuguese,
Mhm.
the quality is
Mhm.
going to decrease significantly. So that's also another
Interesting.
question that has to be
Mhm.
taken into account. And we need more awareness of these intricacies, right? Because again,
Mhm.
there are lots of misconceptions. I think two more points about this. If we look
Yes.
into the future, I mean, of course, technologies are developing and advancing, etc. But I personally don't think that translation will ever become a fully automated activity, or even
Mhm.
writing for that matter, if we talk about ChatGPT, etc. Um,
Yes.
I think, and this differs a lot. I mean, if you ask other language experts, they will say, of course, it will happen. I say it won't happen for the following reason. I think we all, when we talk about translation and interpreting, we have an underlying philosophy of language, an underlying understanding of how language works. And those who believe that AI can take over translation and interpreting for us, they tend to believe that language, natural languages, they have a predominantly universal character, that they are
Mhm.
structures that are common to all languages, that there are
Mhm.
aspects that are beyond languages, that are shared amongst all languages, and that these technologies can sort of hark back on these universal aspects to work across, whichever language pairs you throw at them. Now, I, on
Mhm.
the other hand, I tend to be a bit more of a relativist. I don't think that languages have any particularly relevant universal traits that would
Mhm.
justify or that it would make it possible to have a perfect translation tool. I think each language engenders its own world, engenders its own reality. Of course, there are lots of overlaps. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to learn new languages. But I
Exactly.
don't think there are enough overlaps to say that AI will one day be perfect. There will always be those very particular language uses. And think about what we can do with language. We can lie. We can say
Mm.
completely nonsensical things. We can turn things
Yes.
around in a crazy way. And it takes a
Mhm.
human to understand that. I really don't think that there will ever be a technology that will be able to grasp that. And just one
Fantastic.
last
Mhm.
point. I mean, for
Yes.
those of
Mhm.
you who are anxious, am I going to lose my job? I think what is going to happen, and is happening now, as you've already said, is that the job
Mm.
profile is changing. Of course, it's changing
Mhm.
more towards post editing, which has its challenges, and we have to learn how to navigate this post editing. But I think it's also about, we also have to think about the people who are developing these technologies. I mean, we will need more professionals there to make sure that the quality of automatic translations and interpreting in different language pairs is also higher. We need people to feed these machines, to teach them, to develop them, to make them more inclusive, for example. There's so many, I mean, to address just one issue, there's so many
Mm,
gender related issues, for example, for the languages that
mhm,
mark gender. And if you work with
mhm.
English, English doesn't have any gender. So everything is
True.
translated automatically into the male form, yeah, for example. So this is just
Yes.
one
Mhm,
example. So we will need
mhm.
more people. There are new profiles of language practitioners emerging as well as older profiles, so to speak, become obsolete. So it's not a question of we're losing our jobs, we're changing our profile. That's how I would put it.
I love that. I love what you said, and it's very interesting to see it, through different lenses. I never thought of what you just said, that we will need a new job profile. It's not that we are losing jobs, but we are just slightly changing, the job world, so that the needs, and it's the same in many fields when you think about it. You see, for example, when we talk about load shedding in South Africa, we talk about water shedding. It means that we need more experts in those fields as well, so that and also because there is a need, so there will be a lot of openings, job openings, you see. So it's all about thinking in terms of what do we need right now, what would be a solution to a problem, and now we can help maybe improving AIs. But also, I really, really liked what you said about what we can do with languages. Languages are so wonderful, so flexible. You can play with them. You can use language to lie, like you said. We can use language to write. And I always say that, with literary translation, you cannot use AIs. I translated many books that were published, and you cannot use AI because the AI will not be able to translate, to communicate the idea between the lines, or the nuance that's coming, with a sentence. Because you can have a sentence, but that sentence is full of meaning. So much so that, for example, when you translate from English that is very brief, to French that is maybe more, there's more imagery, there's more, you need to develop an idea. So you would have one sentence in English, but you would have like maybe two or three sentences in French. You see, so that would be difficult for an AI to translate. So I also believe that AIs are actually coming to help us, maybe, because you can use it as a Canva, you know. So it means that language practitioners need to use what is there. It's like if you can see it as a cat tool that they are using, just as something to help them start a translation. But obviously they would have to do a lot of work, because you have to change the syntax, you have to check the genders, like you said, and
The
especially
style.
nowadays, yes, and the style, exactly. And like you said, English is very, it's neutral, while in French, for example, and I take French because I speak French, you would have le, la, and now even in French now there's a conversation going on with, all the genders. How
Yeah,
can we be inclusive, so there's a lot to do. And I don't think that AIs can threaten translators that much. It all depends on how we see it, how we perceive it. And also, we need to work together closer with clients to make them understand what's going on, you see? And so that they understand that, yes, they are AIs, but please know that this is what the AI can do, but this is where I come. This is, this is why you need me as a professional translator, as a human, you know,
absolutely.
because you want. And also, when we talk about localization and marketing, for example, you cannot translate a document through an AI that is for marketing purposes. because you need to understand your target audience. You need to understand what is expected. What do you want your audience to get? How do you want them to react? And from one country to the other, it's different. The language, even if it's French from France or French from Canada or French from Gabon, it's not the same. The audience won't be reacting the same way to a certain um, expression. You see what I mean? And I
Absolutely.
don't think that AIs will be able to catch that and to
Yeah, I think
translate
no, that's
that.
it. You touched on a very important point. This is pretty basic when we do translation studies. One of the first things the students learn is about the scope of the translation, or sometimes we use the Greek word skopos, meaning what is the purpose of the translation? Who are you translating for? And this is such a key word. It changes your translation strategies completely. And AI doesn't know that. You just translate, which we know as translators is not possible. You can't just translate. You need to know the context. You need to understand the target audience. How is this text going to be used, etc., etc. So all these aspects play a pivotal part. And you say, I mean, what you're saying there about awareness, we can come back to that. We need our clients to be aware of this kind of importance of having a translator involved, who is an expert, who is a professional. And again, to come back to another point you raised before, the question of qualifications. I mean, if you have qualifications, you understand your role in society. So you're better equipped to defend your work as well, right? So I think this is really important. I completely agree with you.
No, thank you. What you said is so right. And I just want to send this message here. So clients need to be aware of the importance of having professional translators. Perfect. And now now you see, I like the theme that we decided for today, that we chose for today. I like the fact that you mentioned social cohesion and language practices. So can we start with the basics and explain how do you define language practices on the one hand and social cohesion on the other hand, and what is the correlation between the two?
Okay, thanks. That's another hugely complex question. I'm going to
I
try to
know.
be succinct here.
Yeah.
You see, I have to tell you that this notion of language practice is new to me. I hadn't heard anything like that in Brazil or in Austria or in Europe more generally, where I lived for a while as well, right? But from my understanding, language practice can be very comprehensive. It's any kind of practice that involves language. That will be the sort of the most obvious, perhaps, definition. Of course, we tend to fall within these two camps of translation and interpreting. So some kind of written communication or oral communication, respectively. And that's not only necessarily across cultures. I think you can have language practice within the same culture, within the same language. If we take, for example, a more complex document and we want it to be accessible to the layperson. So we're also going to translate it. It's going to be an interlingual translation, as you call it. So to me, a language practitioner is any kind of language expert that can convert texts into different texts, be they oral or written, be they in different languages or the same language. Could be different registers, different dialects, etc. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Definitely. Yes.
Okay.
No, that's fantastic. And then what would be for you, in your own words, social cohesion?
Social cohesion in this context. Yeah. Well, I
Yes,
have
in
to
this
say,
context.
yeah, to me, this is the $1 million question, right? This was one of the main reasons why I wanted to go to South Africa, because I specialized in multilingualism and I'm fascinated by multilingualism, always have been. And South Africa is, of course, probably together with India, one of the most fascinating, perhaps one of the two most fascinating places in the world to look into extremely complex multilingualism. So I feel really privileged to be able to experience this firsthand now in South Africa. And
Fantastic.
the question of social cohesion, I mean, if I look at countries in Europe, especially, and a lot of the countries that were also colonized by Europeans, you will notice that there's a correlation between the names of the countries and the languages. As you have Portugal, Portuguese, Italian, Italy, England,
Yes.
English, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So this question of social cohesion is very much connected to the question of language. There is this expectation. When I came to Austria, I was shocked. I had just arrived and I didn't speak any German. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and people really expected me to speak German. And it was like, no, you can't speak English. You can't speak any other languages. This is Austria. We speak German here. So there's this direct link between language and nationality, language and belonging. And it's often a single language. Even in those countries that have more than one official language, like Switzerland, like Belgium, they have this territorial principle, which means that if you are in the territory that speaks French, you have to speak French, say in Switzerland. Not many
Mm-hmm.
people are going to speak German, and they don't particularly care, for you if you don't speak French. So
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
multilingualism the question of language practice, and social cohesion is very different in, like I said, in Europe, for example, in
Mm-hmm.
comparison with South Africa. In South Africa, the language you speak doesn't, the whole country obviously does not speak the same language. So the language is
Exactly.
not, yeah, it's not a prerequisite for citizenship. It's not a prerequisite for belonging. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
still trying to understand how this sense of belonging works for South Africans if it's not about language at all. I find it's a
Mm-hmm.
fascinating question. We need to have another program maybe next year, and
I
I'll tell you more
agree.
about it. Yeah, but I can
Yes.
say, in general lines, there's this tendency for social cohesion in the sense of how does a nation come together? How does a country come together? How do I look at my country fellow men and women as belonging to the same place that I belong to? And many places in the world will have language as this glue that sort of makes everything gel, but not
Mm-hmm.
South Africa, which makes it
Mm-hmm.
extremely more important to have excellent language practitioners to be able to
Wow.
navigate right across these languages and cultures. Does this make
Wow.
sense?
Yes, it's an eye opener actually, because I never thought of, well, to be honest with you, I never thought of social cohesion, in this context. So
Yeah.
now listening to you, it is really an eye opener, especially when you talk about language as a glue, language as a giving you a sense of belonging. And it's interesting that you take the case of South Africa because of all the 11 languages, national languages, and then when you look also at the history of South Africa and the weight of history with certain languages, for example, Afrikaans will be seen as a reminder of whatever happened in the past, and then some people will fight because they do not want to use Afrikaans anymore, or others will fight to use Afrikaans because it's their cultural, it's their cultural wealth. It's something, and when you think in those terms, then it binds people together, but at the same time it can be dividing also, because then if you've got people who speak Afrikaans as binding together, and then you've got maybe other people who speak English as binding together, or when you think of isiZulu, Sesotho, or all those languages, and then even among African, like those Black African languages, then you will see that there's also like a rivalry between them sometimes. So then you wonder, how is South Africa holding up? What is, like you said, the glue, that binds them? Because there's so much division in terms of languages, and you see, for me, when I arrived in South Africa, I felt very lost, because being Black but not speaking one of the national languages, so meaning isiZulu, Sesotho, Sepedi, or Setswana, or none of them, then they will ask me, but you're Black, how is it that you don't speak any of our languages? And then I said, but there are lots of Black people in the world who don't speak your languages, but they speak other languages. Like, I come from Gabon, and in Gabon there's also an array of vernacular languages. So French is like the national language, but we have our own languages. Like, I'm from a tribe, we are called Miene, and we speak Galois, for example. And my husband is from a tribe where they speak Fon. you see, and I don't understand him, he doesn't understand me. But when we speak French, then we understand each other, you see. But it doesn't mean that now we cannot belong together, you see. We so it is quite an interesting question to tackle, because there is also that lack of awareness in the language field, you know, that not all black or not all white would speak, for example, Afrikaans or just English, or not all black will speak one of the African languages in South Africa. You've got black who speak other languages, you see, and then they feel betrayed when you speak English to them, because then they think, why do you speak English to me when you are black? You see. So I think it is an issue, and I'm wondering, how is South Africa holding up, because it can be dividing, you know. So it's very interesting what you said, and it is now even more than before. I understand the need for language policies, because then we will try to really give a chance to everyone. But I think that with language policies should come policies, I would say, maybe not advocacy, but we need to make people aware of what is going on everywhere in the world. We need to, because I think South Africa has a big problem. It's that they do not spend enough time and enough resources in educating people about certain issues. You see, for example, that it sounds as something silly or something simple, but some people in South Africa do not know that there are black people from other countries who speak different languages, and it's not something that is odd. It is normal, and then we should be more open, you know, to language diversity. You see, so the more we talk, the more excited I get, because this is so interesting. It's like every time we start talking about something, that then it is an eye opener, and you want to learn more, you want to dig more, you want to understand what can we do, you know. But we can say that South Africa has come a long way, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, I mean, again, I need to look more into this. And this is why, one of the reasons why I wanted to come to South Africa. But just to try to understand this complex multilingualism. I mean, what you described there just sort of underlines how complex it is, and how we can't just take one look at it and figure it out. Because, for example, what I find particularly fascinating in South Africa is that people tolerate, especially those who speak Black South African languages, they tolerate multilingual conversations very well. You have someone speaking Zulu and someone speaking Xhosa, for example, and they'll continue talking and they'll adjust slightly to make sure they understand each other, and they'll just carry on, at least in Gauteng. I have to say Gauteng is a very special area, right, in a province in South Africa. But they will continue talking. Whereas, for example, if you take a similar situation, say, between Portugal and Spain, the two languages are extremely close. They're very, very similar. I don't speak any Spanish, but I can understand 90% of it. And if you get someone speaking Portuguese, someone speaking Spanish, they will most likely never agree to have a bilingual conversation. They will switch most likely to English, for example,
English,
even if they don't speak English well. Yeah.
Yes.
Whereas in South Africa, people don't do that. They continue talking their languages, speaking their languages. They try to accommodate each other, and they have this, what seems to be this natural openness. Most people I speak to in Gauteng, they will say, again, Black people, they will say, I speak 5-6 languages because I want to understand, right? I want to understand people around me. I want to know what they are speaking. I want to be able to talk to them in their language. And this is such a valuable lesson. I mean, when I look at the situation in Europe, I think Europe could learn so much from Southern Africa in this sense. This openness to the other, this notion that I can take a step towards the other. He doesn't or she doesn't need to take a step towards me forcibly all the time. I can make an effort as well. This is such a beautiful lesson, actually. And
it is. And I think that it comes from the Ubuntu philosophy. That is a beautiful philosophy, you know. And when you look at things through those lenses, then you understand that we should accommodate each other, you know, that we are one, we work together, you know, and your benefit is mine, you know, if you win,
Exactly.
we win. So it's a
Yeah.
beautiful philosophy. And I think that South Africa is a miracle, really, because even if there are a lot of issues, but when you look at, you know, and I'm just talking about the language perspective here, when you look at the language wealth and diversity, and we see the work that is being done, I think that a lot has been achieved, but there's more to achieve, of course. And it could be an example for many other countries. And I think of Gabon because Gabon is my country. We have a lot of vernacular languages as well, and French as a national language. But, you know, I'm trying to understand, and this is something I thought about a few months ago, and I've been really trying to do some research on that. How can we use vernacular languages, you know, for development purposes? How can we create more job opportunities, you see, based on those vernacular languages? Because I see language as wealth, but I think that we take it for granted that we speak those languages, and we do not really try to dig deeper, you know, and see what can be done, you know. Could we be maybe like I like what South Africa did, because they decided that, okay, we have 11 official languages, and they are trying, like, I work with the department, with some departments, and then they do translations in all official languages. What does it do? It creates more job opportunities for language practitioners, and that's wonderful. Can this be recreated in some other countries? That's a good question, because it depends also on if there is a language policy that will allows this, you know. But I think that if South Africa can do it, why not other countries? And then it will also send a feeling of inclusivity, isn't it? Where everyone would recognize themselves, where everyone will be able to understand something, where we, instead of using plain English or plain French or something like that, we can also send messages in our vernacular languages. But of course, it will require a lot of work. You know, to start at the beginning. But then, you know, once we start, I think it will become easier. You know, we always say that the harder thing is to start. It's the beginning, isn't it? What do you think?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And I think what you're saying, I mean, there's this term we use in linguistics, especially in language policy research, which is intercomprehension. So it's just one word, right? Intercomprehension. And I think the model of intercomprehension is much more correct, much more ethical, much more promising, much more fruitful than the lingua franca model. That's it. So
Wow.
intercomprehension is something that when I did work on multilingualism in Europe, something I recommended, that there should be more intercomprehension here, more willingness to work on the basis of intercomprehension, which is what already happens a lot, for example, in Gauteng, among the 9 Black African languages that are spoken there. Um, Now, the question of policy is always tricky. I mean, there's no silver bullet and there's no universal solution. Again, each country is going to have its specificity. Sometimes different provinces within a country, different communities will have different needs and different interests. We know in language policy research that no policy can arrive as a kind of silver bullet and resolve a problem. A policy
Mm-hmm.
has to reflect already existing language practices, or at least
Mm-hmm.
language ideologies, at least to a certain extent. If some,
Mm-hmm.
superior instance comes and says, now you must speak this or that way, or now you mustn't say this or that, it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. Language belongs to the people, it belongs to
Mm-hmm.
speakers. So they
Mm-hmm.
won't follow something that they don't deeply believe in already. That's why
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it makes more sense to talk about awareness raising campaigns, to talk about reforming the education system, this kind of thing, than to talk
Mm-hmm.
about bringing in policy. But of
I
course,
see.
I mean, policy is also extremely important, at least at the symbolic
Mm-hmm.
level, as you said. If there's a law
Mm-hmm.
that says this document has to be available in all official languages, then it has to
Mm-hmm.
be available in all official languages and it plays a part. But we need to
Mm-hmm.
go beyond that. Let me just add that now there are actually 12 official languages because
Oh
of the
yes,
South
12.
African Sign Language,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's true. I completely forgot about it, but you're right. I saw
new.
that. I think it was posted by University of no, it was Wits. I think Wits posted a message on LinkedIn
It could be.
announcing that
Yeah.
it could be Wits or
Mm.
University of Pretoria, announcing that now sign language would be the 12th
South
language. So
African
thank
Sign
you for
Language.
that.
That's it. That's
Yes,
it.
yes.
Yeah. So it's
And
still
which is very
language.
good. Yes, yes, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's also, perhaps just to give you a more concrete example, if we look at the WITS language policy, so we have English, and we have Sesotho, we have isiZulu, and South African Sign Language as our four official languages, so to speak. And to
Mm-hmm.
come back to what you were saying, or what can we do? How can we foster these languages? What can we do with
Mm-hmm.
this multilingualism? What can we
Mm-hmm.
do with this wealth, right? So
Right.
the point, what WITS is trying to do is to increase the visibility of these languages, for example, through the linguistic landscape of the university, through signs, etc. But of course, the idea is to increase proficiency both amongst staff, I mean, academic staff, administrative staff, and students, increase their proficiency in these languages. And I think this is extremely important. So, if especially looking at staff from my perspective now, I'm learning isiZulu and I want to continue learning because I think that I mean, if it's me alone, it won't make a big difference. But if it's a lot of academics, imagine at universities in South Africa, they learn these languages and they speak them during class and they
Mm-hmm.
publish in them. And we create
Wow.
journals in them and we write books in
Mm-hmm.
them and there are book series in them. You see, it's not, again, it's not a silver bullet, it doesn't happen overnight, but over the next few decades we can
Mm-hmm.
transform the linguistic landscape of the country. We can increase, we can raise the status of these languages from home languages to languages of science, to languages of
Exactly.
technology. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to
Mm-hmm.
start somewhere. And I
Yeah.
think, again, from my perspective, what is really important is to increase proficiency more, looking again at my cohort, specifically academics at universities. They need to learn these languages and they need to use them and make them visible, because I think if
Mm-hmm.
the 18-year-olds who leave school come to us at university and look at us and say, well, she's speaking isiZulu, that's my home language, so that it is an important language because more and more people are speaking it, and our course materials are in isiZulu and we're reading an article,
Wow.
so
Mm-hmm.
I think this kind of initiative is even more important than policy, and that
Mm-hmm.
then again is a question of agency. I think we all can exercise agency in this area. We can say these languages matter, we want to foster them, we want to make them more visible, right?
Right. That's wonderful. Wow. It's so interesting. So, yes, it is a question of agency. I like that. I like that term, agency. The first time I read it, I didn't really understand, but
Mm.
it's, with time that I understood what it means. It's quite a complex word. You have to understand what it means, really. But yes, I love what you said. And wow, I think we could speak for hours, but we are almost at the end of this wonderful episode. And before we close, I would like to ask you a personal question, and I hope you don't mind. So
Okay.
tell me and tell our viewers, what made you decide to become a language expert?
Well, I have to say, I think I've mentioned this before. I was always fascinated by different languages. I was born in Brazil to a family that came originally from Italy, but I always had a lot of English in my life. My mother studied English, she was very much into literature. So there was this multilingualism in my life from the beginning, and I was always fascinated by that, about precisely a question I raised earlier in the show. uh, do these different languages engender new worlds, new realities? What is it about language that makes us feel different? I feel completely different when I speak, say, German or
Mhm.
my home language, Brazilian Portuguese. How is that
Mhm.
possible? Again, this
Mhm.
question of, is there something universal about languages? At the end of the day, are they all the same? Or
Mhm.
not? There is something unique about each language. This always
Mhm.
fascinated me. And to be honest, I'm still chasing this question, right? It's amazing. I don't have an answer, and I hope it stays like that because it keeps me
Yeah.
motivated, right? So this
Right.
is this is what pushed me, I guess, this fascination and trying to understand how different languages work and to what extent they engender different
Mhm.
worldviews and what that means, right? On a also on a
Mhm.
political level, what does that mean to
Mhm.
speak different languages?
Wow, I love it. I love it really. I remember when I was in high school, I was so bad at mathematics. Literally, I used to get
That's the
like
reason why you went to
5%.
languages, Eva. Okay, me too.
I think
I'll admit it. Me too. That's what it was.
you see, but I was very good at languages. So at first, it started like, something I was good at versus something I was not good at, you see. And then I thought, okay, I don't have a choice. I'll go for languages. But, as I move forward, then I started really having a knack for languages. And when I was in high school, I did English, I did Spanish, I did Italian, and I did Latin as well. And I just loved it. I loved that magic of speaking a new language. Like I loved listening to how I was speaking a different language. How I would start with come stai, mi chiamo Eva, like being able to speak Italian or being able to say hablo, or hablo, like use different types of languages. And I just loved it. And then I thought, hmm, maybe it's something I would like to do. But, I didn't know what were the job opportunities at the time because they didn't really tell us about whatever we could do with languages. And I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, the general trend was that it was better to be in sciences rather than in humanities, rather than in
Humanities,
languages,
absolutely. Yeah.
and then you would feel bad, not being able to be good at math or good at science. And it's only when I got to university and that I started doing translation, I started doing understanding the grammar, understanding what's the difference between may, could, like all those words, and then learn about languages and the history and civilization. And I learned so much, like all the differences between the literature in some African countries, like South Africa or Uganda or other civilizations, other countries, or the European civilization. And then it's only when I was in my honors degree, I was doing my honors degree, that I realized that I would like to become a translator on top of being a French expert. Like I was also doing FLE, teaching French as a foreign language.
One language, yeah.
And then I realized that it's a profession and there are so many opportunities. When you really, really look deep and you study and you get the right qualifications and the right experience. So it's that's why I started this show, because I wanted to share the love I have for languages with anyone out there, because I don't want people to keep on feeling bad for being good at languages and for not being good at science, because science is, yes, okay, it's good, you are good at science, but we need everything to make a world. You need scientists, you need language practitioners, you need writers, you see. So it's something we must nurture and encourage as well. You see, that's why I started what I did. So
And it's
listening to you, it's
Mhm.
wonderful.
that we can support each other. I still remember the shock in my father's eyes when I said I wanted to do language because I have two
You
baby
see?
sisters, right? One sister is a designer and the other one is a lawyer. And then he said, "What?
Wow.
You want to do languages?" He was really disappointed.
But you see, it's exactly what I'm talking about. That before, back in the days, we saw languages as if you were doing to do art. Like you would say, I want to be a painter, or I
Yeah.
want to
Or
be a
I want to be in
musician.
a rock band.
I
Yeah.
want,
I know. I
yeah, you
know.
see, then you think, but what are you going to do? You can't make money with that.
Wow.
And now I have a lot of people looking at me who say, wow, I didn't know that you could actually live such a good life with languages, have such a huge career, and have so much, with languages. And it's just wonderful. And I think that we need to keep on, you know, bringing awareness about the power of languages and the beauty of languages.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, we go
thank you
back
so
to
much.
this question. Yeah, no,
Yes,
thank
yes,
you. I
please.
think we support each other this way, but just this
Yes,
awareness about the complexities and the importance of language. And that will, of course, apply to the humanities as a whole. I think we have this crisis in the humanities now in terms of funding, especially because obviously we don't produce products, we don't sell things, for example, like engineers do, for example, the medical scientists do. But what the humanities does, and that's extremely important, is to think about these underlying questions, right? How does knowledge work? How do we produce knowledge? To think about the history of science and the history of our societies and our institutions, etc., etc. And language plays a pivotal part in this discussion. So it is extremely important. It's something that's often taken for granted. But when you
that's
take a
true.
closer look at it, you say, aha, this is actually very important. Yeah.
Very important. I agree. So tell me, Alice, what will be your final and last word to our viewers? I would like you to address the language practitioners in the making and the companies who would be looking in using professional translators or interpreters, and also our colleagues, all language practitioners, interpreters, and translators.
Mm-hmm. I'm just writing this down. Well, I would say the language practitioners in the making, I'd say seek qualifications. Try and obtain good, solid qualifications because you don't just need skills, mechanical skills that you can acquire doing a repetitive job for 10 years, right? It's not operating a machine. You really need to have training and you really need to have a background in the academic disciplines that are translation and interpreting, right? So seek qualifications that will set you off exactly very, very, very nicely into the profession. The second one, companies working with language practitioners. Yes, I think especially considering what's happening in AI at the moment, I think companies have to be more aware of the complexities of language and more aware of the risks if they don't take the question of language seriously. You just risk alienating thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people if you just, throw your text into some tool and you take it on the other side and publish it, for example, without having a good professional qualified translator, in this case, look into it. Or it could be oral communication as well, and then you would be an interpreter. It makes a huge difference the way a text is produced and whether the language is correct, the register is correct, the style is correct, whether it appeals to your target audience. So it's not the kind of thing you can just do yourself or ask a friend because he or she speaks two languages. It does not work like that, and the risk is
Indeed.
just too high not
Mhm.
to engage a professional to do that work for you.
Mhm.
And our fellow professional translators, interpreters, language practitioners in the Southern African context, we need to stay together. We need to think together of ways forward in the country. What's going to happen Will there be some kind of accreditation or not? Should there be one? Should we have more regulations in the profession, and how? Should we try to introduce, for example, minimum wages, or maximum wages for certain kinds of tasks? Let's try and have different platforms, events, where we can come together and brainstorm together and come up with solutions together. I mean, we can shape the landscape of language practice in South Africa now. I mean, now is the moment. So we should seek dialogue and stay together.
Wow. I'm trying to type what you said. So let's try and have different platforms and
Yeah,
events to shape the language landscape. That's
absolutely.
wonderful. Wow, it was such a pleasure to have you as a guest.
Well,
And
ditto.
I had a wonderful time with you. I learned so much. And this is what I like also about languages, is that every day is an opportunity to learn more. And it's not just in terms of words and vocabulary and expressions, it's also about how language is evolved and how we can be, working together to improve, like you said, to shape the language scape, so the language landscape. So thank you very much, and I wish you a fantastic International Translation Day, Alice. And I also think that now people understand the importance of having solid qualifications, and I can say that it's a very good place to start with. I am a translation mentor at WITS, and I enjoy working there.
Thank
And
you.
for more information, please do not hesitate to contact Alice and her
Yes,
team to
I was
send
going to
an
say,
email.
if you
Yes.
Google me, you'll find my email address at VIT, and I would be really happy if I can help you. If you're thinking, well, perhaps I want to start a career, what shall I do? I mean, just write to me, and I'm sure we can talk and come up with ideas together. Eva,
It's
thank
wonderful.
you. It's been
Thank
immensely enriching for me, this experience. I hope we can continue talking. Um,
Definitely. There's
and
more to say.
congratulations, yeah, on this beautiful initiative. This is so
Thank
important.
you.
We talked earlier about agency. This is you exercising your agency. You're saying, well, I want to give more visibility to these topics. So I'm going to grab this opportunity and I'm going to exercise my agency. This is what we need. And it's amazing. Congratulations and
Oh,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Elise. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please send your comments, share. This is our way of celebrating the International Translation Day. And we hope that you learned as much as we did, that you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. We will hopefully come back with more. Because as you can see, it's an ongoing conversation, and Alice will have so much more to say about social cohesion. I can't wait for whatever she finds in a few months'
I
time.
can't wait either.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think definitely we need to have more of this. So thank you for everything you do, Alice, and congratulations on everything you achieved on the latest book. Can you tell us quickly about your last book? I know
The
you were
last
in
book.
Italy, right? For
Yeah, I just
that.
launched it
Yes.
in Torino. Yeah, that was
Yeah, yeah.
lovely. So
Mhm.
the last book is about the future of language policy in the European Union. I wrote it with a diplomat, an Irish diplomat, a colleague of mine, a dear colleague called Sean Orion. And what we
Mhm.
do is basically we try to bridge the gap between academia and policy making, right? Because he's a diplomat and I'm an academic. So we work together to look at different possible scenarios for the future of language policy in Europe. And I have to say, or in the European Union to be more correct, and I have to say, while writing the book, I thought a lot about South Africa and about everything that Europe can learn from South Africa. So I'm trying to think of future projects in which I can bring the two together to see how we can sort of profit from each other's different worldviews and perspectives on language.
Beautiful. And how can one get hold of that book?
Mm, it's probably the easiest way is if you Google me, you find my website, which is actually
Mhm.
just aliceleo.com. So that's pretty easy, right? It's
Okay.
just my name,
Fantastic.
aliceleo.com.
Let
And
me type it.
you can see a link
Alice
to
Leo.
the book.
alicelil.com. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I mean, this book unfortunately is not available open access, but you should be able to find it at a library, for example, at WITS. They should have it in different universities as well. But my previous book, the one from 2021, which you can also find on my website, was published open access. So if you're interested in language policy research in general, you can have a look at it. You can download the book for free, which is easy.
Wow. That's wonderful. I'm sure many are happy to hear that. So thank you so much, Alice. All the best with your future endeavors. Thank you so much for watching. And once again, happy International Translation Day. See you next time. Bye, Alice. Bye, everyone.